thank the member and I call the member for Forrest.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I rise to speak on the condolence for Senator Jim Molan, as others have in this place, and I would thank each of the speakers who've come before me for their comments, and particularly the member for Eden Monero and the member for Braddon, I think, gave us a perspective that none of us, or very few of us in this place, would have. But it was one that highlights the qualities of Jim Molan, probably better than most, with someone so close to him during his time in defence. I really wanted to start by not only offering my deepest condolences to Jim's wife Anne and their children Sarah, Erin, Felicity, Michael and the grandchildren, but equally to thank them for supporting Jim with everything that he did in his time in defence, in the community and in the parliament, because it was a total life of service. But as members in this place know, we need loved ones around us to support us in what we do, to be able to contribute to the community in such a way. Well, Jim was able to contribute to his nation with the support of his family, as well as everything else he did. And I really want to acknowledge and thank his family for supporting him in everything that he did throughout his life. And I'm sure Jim himself knew that so much of what he was able to achieve was done with the support and the encouragement of such a close and loving family. And I thank them very much for that. But I'll miss Jim as a colleague. And I know all of my colleagues feel the same way, because in his wonderful way, he had an influence on us all, And we all know about his strong leadership. Leadership comes in so many different ways. And Jim showed it even in this place to all of us, in the quiet way that he encouraged us, in the way that he listened to his colleagues, in the way that he encouraged us, as we heard from the member for Braddon. He encouraged us in the same way that he encouraged his troops. He didn't, when you raised an issue with him, he encouraged you, he offered a few thoughts, but then he encouraged you to be talking about what you felt about that particular issue. But that strong leadership is a legacy, not only for his family, for us in this place, but as the member for Braddon said, everyone who served with him and for him. And that loyalty that you've seen developed through such an honourable and decent human being who served his country with great honour. And he's one of those people in defence that when I've been out elsewhere in the world, and there's an enormous respect globally for our Australian Defence Force members, and Jim would be at the top of that tree of respect. And he's the reason why we are so well respected globally, as are our members of the Defence Forces. He was a true patriot and a great Australian, and that's how I hope he's remembered. Not just the 40-year career in the Army and reaching that rank of Major General, but the Chief, he took on some very challenging roles and brought the communities that he served in with him along the way. And being part of that community and supporting the community in what it wanted to achieve, as well as helping that community. And we saw that in Papua New Guinea, in East Timor, in Indonesia, in Malaysia and Germany, and he served in the US and Iraq, as we know. But those smaller communities would have certainly benefited from Jim's wisdom and his willingness to listen and work with the local community, with our Defence Forces while they were there. His Distinguished Service Cross, certainly well deserved, and there's an extensive career that others have talked about in defence. But when he came into the Senate in 2017, and earlier than that, in 2013, one of the things when I was here in this House, the challenge we faced with the illegal maritime arrivals, and Jim's role as the envoy for the Stopping the Votes, the very architect that helped to break that people smugglers model, and the amount of people from overseas whose lives were saved because they weren't arriving on leaky boats and stranded. Jim was a very key part of saving those lives as well. And that's something that I would not want people to overlook. He actually helped break that smuggler's business model, but more importantly, he helped save people's lives. We've heard even today his role as a bushfire firefighter locally, another form of service for Jim, as well as being a senator and coming into this place. But I found Jim to be a wonderful colleague and equally the friend that you could count on, and the friend that could maintain a confidence. You could have conversations with Jim about a range of matters, but he was someone that I rang whenever I wanted his advice around military, national security and defence matters, because, like so many others, I trusted him. I trusted the advice, I respected and trusted the advice that Jim gave me, especially around national security. And we had many lively discussions, especially when I had a good read of his most recent book, Danger on Our Doorstep. And I have a feeling that this particular work, in part, as he said, initial fiction, but then focused on the facts, I'm sure that's being used in a broader sense by some of our Western allies and referenced for a range of other purposes in a broader global security sense. I've got no doubt with the content of that book. And we had several discussions over what he'd written and the conclusions he'd reached and his analysis that was contained throughout that book. Well, as has been said, none of us were really ever in any doubt as to what Jim thought or believed in, because he was a patriot and he had strong views. But equally, when you had a discussion with Jim, Jim didn't talk down to you, in spite of his broader knowledge and experience than you had in that field. Your views were respected, valued. He listened, and he was thoughtful about what you had to offer, and he thought before he gave you a response. So he was just a great bloke. You know, I just found him a great bloke and a great colleague, and someone, as I say, a really respected and trusted source of information and advice. But then when he was fighting cancer, well, I think what we all saw, particularly on our side who were with him throughout that process and saw the struggle, that courage and passion he brought to his role in his family, in his community, in the army, was the same as what he brought to his fight against cancer. Positive, facing forward, keeping up a really strong presence, not giving in, and doing his best to fight it. And I'm sure, you know, when you saw him on television or you saw him interviewed, even when he was from home, you saw Jim wanted you to see him still fighting the fight, whether it was about issues. The cancer was another fight that basically he didn't make much of. He was fighting other fights for the good of this nation. And that's what he did right until the last. And I'm sure that's an enduring memory for us all. But Jim was a truly great Australian, a great patriot. He provided incredible service to Australia that is an example for us all. And look, Jim's earned the right to rest in peace, but he's left an incredible legacy for this nation, and one that we should all work in this place to not forget and to seek to emulate.
Yeah.